Welcome everybody aboard the Tabletop Express. This is this game for you? And I'm really excited to have Jeff Stevens join me tonight for a conversation about a very fun game called The Crew. Jeff, welcome aboard.
Hi, Chris. It's really a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I'm glad you could join me. You know, tonight we are talking about a game that I am a very big fan of, The Crew. And one of the reasons we're talking about The Crew, I know you and I were speaking a little bit about this on Twitter and some other places along the way. And I come across the idea of the fact that you had played it. And if you could confirm for me, we talked about this a little before. I believe you've played this with 4 people in terms of your playthrough.
That's correct. With everyone being locked down during the pandemic, finding a game that really appealed to the whole family has been kind of a challenge. We've got a lot of number of board games, and most of them typically last a long time. One of our favorite games to play here is Talisman, and as you can imagine, Talisman can put people is very cutthroat in just normal gameplay, but you add the additional stress of this last year, it wouldn't cut it. So
right.
The Crew was much more something that I think the family could get behind, and it became a family favorite really quickly once we brought it into the house.
Yeah, and I think as I talk about this game, the thing first and foremost that I speak to is that I played this with my 7-year-old son, as well as my wife. My wife and I are basically the same age. We're literally 2 months apart. So, but the fact that my 7-year-old son was playing this game, I always like to point out. So fairly easy to pick up in that sense, and we could get into that. But playing with 4 versus 3, I think the other interesting thing from an experience perspective that we can both speak to as we talk throughout this is, what is that experience like? But I think the first thing that we need to get into before we get into anything is, how does this game set up? So the great thing about this game, Jeff, I think you'd agree, is this is so easy to set up. It is quick, easy. It doesn't take very long. It's different depending on the mission, but it's quick. There's no question on that.
And once you pick up the dynamics that first time, it's very easy to just jump into it and go with it, which is one thing I love. So the sequential mission idea is a brilliant idea for a mechanic for this game, because it almost works with an increased level of complexity with each mission that you play. So at the beginning, it almost works as a tutorial on itself to allow you to learn how to play the game with the first couple of hands. And then once you start getting that rhythm, then it starts getting more and more complex and challenging as you go.
Yeah, and then I have a screenshot up just so people can see. This is the first page, basically, of the book. And what's neat is you actually set your crew at the beginning. Who is your crew? So in this case, it's my wife, my son, and me. And you put the start date in, and it outlines how to play and how to use this logbook where you're tracking everything. I want to point out too, what I think is great is we're logged in that first section, but now there's all these multiple crews that we can set up in here. So if I'm playing with different people, I just set it up under a different one of the next sections down. So in terms of playing it, you could set up multiple crews, so to speak, in your house or within your different game groups. But it's very straightforward in terms of setup. That there's no question. And the logbook is great. Can we talk about the logbook a little bit?
Yeah,
it's just a neat contraption in the sense that one side's the rule book, you flip it the other way, logbook.
Yeah, it's a nice, tight design, very easy to pick up. I really also enjoy the artwork that's part of this game. So to give people an idea of the premise of the game, you're playing the crew of a starship that is traveling across the solar system, and it's a card trick game involving cards that have numerical numbers to them. So the highest card takes the trick for a particular color suite. Or suit. I don't know why I said sweet. But the art that's on them kind of plays off of that whole idea, and it's a little playful, which is nice because the game has a little level of tension to it, but the cards give a bit of levity, especially like the card that mimics the Michelangelo painting of God touching man, where you've got 2 astronauts reaching out to each other in the same way on the top of the ship.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the art, because the art in this game is stellar. which is a whole different game, by the way, that is also fantastic. But it's something I didn't even realize the detail of until later on, because I started looking and realized what's happening with this art, because you are trying to decide what cards you're going to take. And trick taking, we should speak to the fact that I think this also serves, and we'll get this into audience a little bit more, but it serves as a great introduction to trick taking, because the first few missions are basically, this is how you do a trick taking game, and this is how trick taking works. So in terms of that, I think that's one of the stellar parts about this. Justin, I guess that it really is a perfect login to what is the gameplay about, and we could talk about that trick taking. So I know we should clarify this. You've gotten farther in the game than my family has.
I think we got to mission 24 or 25 in the book.
I think I'm in the late teens. I believe I'm in the late teens at this point. So you're a little ahead of me. Let's talk about this trick taking first. Are you a fan of trick taking games personally?
I am. My wife and I used to play a card game called 500 all the time in the lobby of our dorm back at Florida State University, and I really loved playing that. We've never played it with the kids. My wife tried to teach me how to play bridge, and that was way too complicated for me without having to use that cheat sheet liberally. Outside of that, for games in the house itself, we don't have a lot of trick-taking games. So this is a dynamic that's a lot different than anything that we've had in the past here.
Yeah, and I think we should speak a little bit to trick taking in the sense of, this is a trick taking game with plenty of twists. So you could see some of these other game pieces, and these all do a few different things. So for example, you may have a mission where you need to win a trick for a particular card first, and then another one has to be second. You're choosing at the start of some of these rounds which card you're going to take as the player, and you're trying to strategically take those. But the game gives you some other ways to get around that, where maybe you can get an assist, and maybe you could say, okay, we're going to swap who's going to take this card based on what I ended up getting. But all these different tokens you're not using right from the get-go. They come in more and more as you get more advanced in the game. So you see some of these up front, you're like, I wonder what this is going to be about. So part of this to me is the discovery factor of, I wonder how that's going to go, or what is this going to do for the gameplay?
Yeah, and one of the tricks in this game is you really can't talk to each other as you're doing it. There's only a limited amount of communication that can happen, kind of similar to bridge in that kind of regard. As astronauts who have the ability to communicate with one another, but only in a limited fashion. So you see those green and red tokens there as you're going through the game. And you're indicating to people what you have in your hand. You can use those to indicate a particular card in your hand and say, this is the highest card value in this color suit that I have. This might be the only card I have in this suit, or this is the lowest value in that particular suit. And that's the only communication you can give to the rest of the table on what you have in your hand for them to see. And in some of the missions that you'll play, sometimes you lose that ability to communicate like that at all to anybody. Or you can just communicate that you have one of those three values, but they don't know which value it is that you have. So there's a lot of deduction that happens as well in this.
And I think what's neat about it is, and some people who watch this may know the game The Mind, where you're trying to read each other's mind on what numbers to play down. It can get crazy and very tricky. You are getting to know how people are thinking and playing, and that's part of the real value of this. I would actually go as far as saying, like, playing this in the workplace, right? Hypothetically, back at some point in time when that was a place to be. It would be a great way to work on that communication. And again, it's pretty straightforward with all these things once you get to them. But I go back and say the discovery factor is really cool. I will point out the spaceman is the one who has a particular card, who pulls a particular card at the beginning. So you will actually know that they have a particular trump card, or the card that will win all. And so that is what the spaceman is. But it's a neat, in terms of gameplay, I think, just ever changing and you feel you were really are on these missions. The first arguably 10 missions are your training missions. Literally, you're not even in space yet. So the theme is there. The theme works really well here. I don't think the theme, as cool as the theme is, I think I would play this game with different themes too. But I think the theme is a perfect choice here, and the story goes with it. We didn't show it, but every log and every mission has a whole thing that you can read out, and I make sure we read out every single one whenever I play the game.
It definitely creates a narrative that keeps you enthralled as to the next thing that happens, because you can see how when you're successful with a hand, how that leads to the next thing and the next challenge that someone has. It's funny that you mentioned the mind, because that's the game we alternated with while playing the crew. We would play one night the crew and one night the mind and go back and forth between them.
Well, I'll tell people to look up the mind if they have not played the mind, but that would probably make you better at the mind. If you play this game well, you're probably going to get better at the mind. Let's talk about the replayability, though. So it's fair to say you and I both are playing the same group and not completed. But what I like about this is, again, as I pointed out in the beginning, I can run this with a different crew. And every crew to me is going to feel different because we're going to have to catch the vibes. I'm going to have to work with people. I'm probably not playing with the exact same group. Again, I'm probably going to differ up that group. But the replayability is there. It's certainly to some not going to be, I think, as replayable because, I've done this mission before. But for me, I would feel like I could get together with a new group and we're going to have a whole different dynamic. So,
I totally agree with that. You mentioned doing it in the office, and I think this would be an amazing kind of team building exercise to go through this and see how different minds work and how we operate with one another. I also sometimes judge our replayability at home based off of if we lose a particular hand or a challenging game, does the family want to pull them back out again, or do they say, no, let's move on to something else? And when we hit that snag in the middle of this around mission 25, that was more on the draw of the cards itself. Once we pulled the cards, it was obvious that we were not going to be able to complete this mission with the tricks that were there. So we ended up having to do it 4 or 5 times, but there was nobody in the family who said, oh, let's just give up tonight. Everybody was like, just shuffle. Let's do it again. I want to play again. So it's definitely there as something that has an immense ability for you to do the replay.
You make a great point because you do go back to a mission. You'll say, let's do it one more time. One more time. I compare that to like the video game. If you were playing video games, it's almost like, oh, there's just one more mission I want to do. Oh, there's one more side action I can take. It's that same kind of thing. You want to keep playing it and you want to keep trying to beat it. And in that way, I think the replayability is extremely high. I do think, you do get in some, tricky situations sometimes where it's like you need to win this last trick and you need to win it with like a 1 or a 2. So now you're waiting and hoping that you've got the trump card that's going to win. And if you don't have it, you're pretty much shot. So there's a little bit of that bad luck that can occur. So you're going to have to replay the later missions more than once. I don't think anyone is playing this if someone's accomplished this game in 52 turns, or 50 turns, whatever it may be. I would love to meet them and talk to them because that would actually be an incredible accomplishment, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm curious. Did you ever use the satellite to contact mission control back on Earth? We've never used that feature, and so I'm curious how it plays.
You know what? That's a great point. I think I'm about 15, 16, 17 in, and I don't think we've used it either. It is a feature that is meant to help you. And I don't know why we haven't used it. I don't think it's a bad addition to the game by any means, but maybe I'm just stubborn and haven't wanted to use it. I don't know. I haven't used it. So if anyone comes back and watches this at some point, I'd love to hear from someone who has used it and hear what you think. But I've not used it. So I can't speak to that. Unfortunately, that's one thing we can't speak to. One thing we do have to speak to on this one, though, is who is the audience for this? And I'll throw this one right at you. You've obviously played this with your family, but who do you think is the ideal audience for this game based on your playthrough?
I think it is an ideal game for families. Like you said, I think it's got a wide age range that people can use for it. I think this is also, like we said, there's a team building kind of icebreaker game. I think this is a good starting game for the beginning of a game night, or for people who are not necessarily invested in playing tabletop games. So at a party where you just have a group of people that want to sit around, I think this is a good starting game, and I think it's got a hook that'll keep them invested to play several rounds at least.
It's almost like an untraditional party game because this could be a party game, but it doesn't come off in the same way as some would think of a party game, like some more inappropriate ones, or an apples to apples, or whatever it might be. I'm saying apples to apples instead of the other one because of families, but
Yeah. Oh,
I'm
getting old, so my parties are more tame these days.
Yeah, I think, yeah, families. I do think this is one that does not have to be families. I think this could be a nice, if you've got a board game group as an example, so you do play games often, this is a nice in between. Say, okay, we're going to do the crew in between a big game. And you could keep that same group going and then go back to it. I think for families, this is great. I go back and say this for trick taking. This is a great way to learn. I had Fox in the Forest and a variety of other games. I could not get my wife to play it. I could get my wife to play a lot of games. My wife plays most games that I have with me, but was having a hard time getting her to play trick taking. This one, with the combination of the theme and the fact that the missions, again, taught you trick taking, for me, this was a winner. And so for me, I think families, it's a huge opportunity. But you mentioned it, and I do think the work group. I think for teaching collaboration, I put this in the same category for teaching communication skills as I put another game that I eventually would love to talk about on channel called Magic Maze, where it's not about, you're not talking directly all that much, but you had to communicate the entire time. And that's such a valuable skill in the workplace. So I would agree with you on that. And I really think this game could be enjoyable for most people. I think there's a very small select group who would not enjoy this. And those are probably the ones who only want like a heavy game. But that's you're not playing probably a card game of any sort, unless maybe it's Dominion with every expansion. if you're into more of a heavy experience, so that would be my take on it.
I agree. I think it's very portable, and you can take it anywhere you want to, and it's easy to set up. So I think it would be something I would throw in my bag in travel once we move back to being able to really travel. And
yeah,
because it's
portability. You mentioned, I'm glad you do, because look at this. This is the box. I mean, it's small. I can throw this in a bag very easily, and this could be in a backpack. This could be in a suitcase, no problem. You could fit a bunch of games in here, and you could honestly fit probably another smaller card game in there. There's enough room. The second compartment has all of the little tiny pieces, but yeah, it's small, and it's definitely portable. So that, I think, is the other pro of this game. It's a game you can bring with you places, and hopefully we're traveling soon. I'm also will go as far as saying there's a lot of games you could play over Zoom. This one, not so much, unfortunately. That's probably, but
yeah,
Board Game Arena, I believe, has this. So if you do want to play it and you are on a service like Board Game Arena, which is free, but though I believe this one may be under a paid tier, I'm not sure. The crew is on there. So you can play it online. You just need to have the service for that one. But I would like to say we're obviously both approve of it. Let's share some of our final thoughts on this. So for me, this is a winner. The design of this is fantastic. This was an award winner for a lot of reasons. You should find this relatively easily. I don't think this one is as hard to find now. It was for a bit. There is a game out there that's also a card game right now that you might like if you like a game like this, though it's not trick taking, I don't believe, but that's Stellar. And that one is a little bit harder to find right now. That has a really beautiful theme to it, really beautiful art as well. But this one, pretty accessible. So for me, if I am a family and I'm looking for something a little bit different, this is a game I'm recommending right now to anyone who wants something that's a little bit different. And it's a great dinner game. Didn't mention it before, but we play this over dinner all the time, and that's usually the time we're playing it. So that goes to show you just how little space it really needs to take up on the table.
Yeah, I agree that I think this is a game that is a keeper, and you should go out and get it. This was a last minute Christmas purchase for us, and for that last week and a half before my son went back to college, it was on the table every night. Somebody in the family said, "Let's pull out the crew," and it was like 7 straight days of playing it until he left. So I think like we said, it's a good portable, easy to carry around game, and it's easy to pick up. And I think everybody should have it in their repertoire.
Yeah, and I will add that because it is small, it does make a great stocking stuffer the next time a holiday comes around. So feel free to consider that. I do want to also take a moment to thank you, Jeff, for joining me to talk about the crew. Hope you'll come back in the future, and I'm sure you got a lot of other games that you can speak to, knowing you and your interest in the games that you play. So hopefully you'll come back, be on the show for another one of these. I also want to say thank you to anyone who tuned in live. Obviously, this video is part of a series. So if there is a game that you would like to see talked about and discover, is this game for you? Let me know in the comments. Let me know in the Facebook comments, YouTube comments, wherever you saw this. And we'll be certain to put it on the list of games to get to the table and to talk about with someone from this great community of board gaming entrepreneurs and experts and whatever you want to call them. But you know what, there's a lot of board game people out there, and I want to feature as many as possible. So hopefully you also may know some people who love some games. I'd love to have them on the show. I want to feature a diverse group of people on this show and really feature just the world that is board gamers. So if you got someone, please let me know for that too. And of all that said, I just want to say one last thing, is that thank you so much for coming aboard the Tabletop Express. We'll be back. And a friendly reminder that if you missed it earlier today, and I will make sure that I put this at the end of the video after it uploads, had a chat with Jamie Stegmeyer today of Stonemaier Games on the Creators Corner. So you're going to want to go check out that video as well. Great conversation that goes a little bit behind the curtain, what it takes to make a game and what it's like to be a game designer, creator, and publisher. So everyone have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.